Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. We move to the book of Siyam, book of fasting. Fasting, Siyam, in the language means imsak, which is to refrain from something. In the technical terminology, in the Sharia terminology, it means to refrain from eating, drinking and sexual intercourse from dawn till sunset as an act of worship and obedience to Allah, thereby seeking to gain close to Him. The purposes behind fasting is to increase you in your taqwa so that you do not commit all types of sins, minor and major. The Siyam, which is obligatory, is the one performed during the month of Ramadan. شهر رمضان الذي أنزل فيه القرآن هدى للناس وبينات من الهدى والفرقان فمن شهد منكم الشهر فليصم. The month of Ramadan, in which the Quran was sent down as a guidance to mankind and proofs and evidences for the guidance and a criterion between right and wrong. So whomsoever witnesses the month, meaning sees the moon, then let him fast it. So this is a clear order to fast the month of Ramadan, which means that it is wajib. Also, as an evidence that Siyam is wajib, is the famous hadith of Ibn Umar, in which he says that Islam is based upon 5 elements, and one of them is fasting in the month of Ramadan. The benefits of fasting are truly great. In the hadith in the Sahih, it says, "Man sama Ramadana imanan wa ihtisaban ghufira lahu ma taqaddama min dhanbi." Whoever fasts Ramadan out of iman and seeking reward, then his past sins would be forgiven. Fasting out of iman means you are fasting because the order from Allah Azza wa Jal, and you want to do it for Allah. So you're not doing it to impress anybody else or for any other reason. You are solely doing it for Allah Azza wa Jal as an act of obedience to Him. It is also narrated that there is a gate of Jannah called Ar-Rayyan, which the people who used to fast will enter through. During Ramadan, the major shayateen are locked up. This does not mean that there are no shayateen in Ramadan, because of course there are many shayateen from the jinn, but the major ones are locked up. So this makes it easier for the Muslim to focus on worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and it helps him to increase doing good, and it helps him to leave off sin. How do we know that the month of Ramadan has started? We know by the sighting of the moon, and this is the asl, this is the original ruling, to sight the moon. This is due to the hadith, "Sumu li ru'yatihi wa aftiru li ru'yatihi fa in ghumma alaykum fa'uddu sha'ban 30." Fast when you see it, meaning the moon, and break your fast when you see it, meaning the moon of Shawwal. And if it is hidden from you, meaning the moon, then count Sha'ban as 30 days. However, in Britain, most Muslims follow the moon sighting of Saudi. Therefore, to keep with the Jama'ah and for the sake of unity, it would be best that everybody starts the fasting at the same time. So if most people are following Saudi, then in this case it would be permissible to follow the Saudi just for the sake of being with the Jama'ah. In this chapter there are 6 fundamental rules, so we'll begin with the first one, which is the conditions for Siyam to become wajib, and there are 4 of these. So this is to note down first of all. Number 1, Al-Islam. Number 2, Al-Bulugh, which is puberty. Number 3, Al-Aql, which is intellect. And number 4, Al-Qudra, which is the ability to fast. Let's go through these. Number 1, Al-Islam, because in order to fast you have to be a Muslim. Fasting is not obligatory upon the kafir, because what is obligatory upon him is to become a Muslim. Allah Azza wa Jal says, وَلَقَدْ أُوحِيَ إِلَيْكَ وَإِلَى الَّذِينَ مِنْ قَبْلِكَ لَإِنْ أَشْرَكْتَ لَيَحْبَطَنَّ عَمَلُكَ وَلَتَكُونَنَّ مِنَ الْخَاسِرِينَ. It has been revealed to you and those before you that if you commit shirk, all your actions will be null and void. Also, when Allah mentioned the prophets in the Quran, he finished one of the ayahs by saying, وَلَوْ أَشْرَكُوا لَحَبِطَ عَنْهُمْ مَا كَانُوا يَعْمَلُونَ. And if they, meaning the prophets, had committed shirk, all their actions would have become null and void. Point number 2 is puberty, because before that the pen is lifted from the young child. However, it is good practice for the Muslim parent to get the young child used to fasting, because this was the practice of the early Muslims. So you could begin by making him fast perhaps half a day if he is able to, and notch it up a bit. So by the time he comes to fasting a full fast, meaning by the time he reaches puberty and the fast is obligated upon him, it won't be too much of a shock to his system. Point number 3 is al-aql, because a madman is not obligated to fast, and of course a madman cannot come out with a niyyah or intention. Point number 4 is that he must have the ability to fast, so it means he must not be ill. When we say ill, we mean it must be an illness in which it would become difficult to fast during that illness. If it's something quite light, like a little toothache or a slight headache or a slight cold, in which you can still fast without any harm, then in this case fasting will still be obligatory, because even though you're medically ill, you're not ill in terms of the Sharia. And then we can also divide illness into 2 types. One type is an illness which you cannot recover from, or there's no hope that you will recover from. This could be a serious illness like cancer or something of that sort. And the other type of illness is that it's an illness in which you cannot fast, however, one can hope that you will recover from it, something like a flu. If it is an illness in which you will recover from, or it is hoped that you will recover from, then you have to make up the fast when you recover from that illness. Allah Azza wa Jal says, وَمَنْ كَانَ مَرِيضًا أَوْ عَلَى سَفَرٍ فَعِدَّةٌ مِّنْ أَيَّامٍ أُخَرٍ. And whoever is ill or on a journey, then he must make up the days which he missed. If it is a type of illness in which you will not recover from, or there is no hope that you will recover from, and add to this category also very, very old people who can fast, but they will find difficulty in fasting due to their old age and frailty. So if you're from this category, then you need to feed a poor person for every day of Ramadan half a sa'. So this equates to about 1.5 kilograms of rice. So for the whole month, if we take it to be 30 days, it would be 30 times 1.5, so 45 kilograms of rice for the whole month. Should you fast if you are traveling? This depends on your circumstances. If you feel you are able to fast and that it won't cause you a difficulty, then it is better for you to fast even during the travels. This is because Rasulullah ﷺ said, بَادِرُوا بِالْأَعْمَالِ, do not delay in performing your good deeds. Likewise, it has been reported in the Sahih that Rasulullah ﷺ was traveling with his companions, and they said that it was so hot that one of us would put his hand on his forehead due to the intense heat, and there was nobody fasting amongst us except Rasulullah ﷺ and Abdullah ibn al-Rawaha. Also in the Sahih, Hamza al-Aslami came to Rasulullah ﷺ and said, Inni ajidu bi quwwatan ala siyam fi safar fahal alayya junah. I find that I am able to perform the siyam during my travels, so if I did so, would there be any sin? So Rasulullah ﷺ replied, Innahu rukhsatun min Allah, faman akhadha biha fahasanun, وَمَنْ أَحَبَّ أَنْ يَصُومَ فَلَا جُنَاحَ عَلَيْهِ. He said to break your fast is a rukhsa, it's a permission or a lightening of the load from Allah. So whoever takes this rukhsa, then this is good. However, whoever wants to fast during the travel, then there is no sin upon him. On the other hand, if you find that fasting will cause you difficulty in your travels, then it is better to leave off the fast. This is due to the hadith لَيْسَ مِنَ الْبِرِّ الصَّوْمِ فِي السَّفَرِ, that to fast during the travels is not from bir, from righteousness. Also in the Sahih that at the time of the conquest of Mecca, when they were traveling, they were fasting because it was during Ramadan. And this fasting caused great difficulty upon the people. So they asked Rasulullah ﷺ about this. So he ordered a cup of water, and he held up this cup of water so everybody can see, and he drank it, thus signifying that it is okay to break your fast. Then some people came to Rasulullah ﷺ and told him that there are some people who continued fasting. So Rasulullah ﷺ said, "Ulaika al-usa, ulaika al-usa." They are the disobedient ones, they are the disobedient ones. The pregnant and breastfeeding women can also break the fast if they wish. This is due to the hadith, إِنَّ اللَّهَ وَضَعَ عن المسافر شطر الصلاة والصوم عن المسافر والمرضع والحبلى. The hadith is Hasan, narrated by Tirmidhi. This hadith says that Allah has knocked off or has cut the salah in half for the traveler, because he can shorten the prayers, of course. And he has also wiped out the fasting from the musafir, from the traveler, from the murdi', which is the breastfeeding woman, and from the hubla, which is the pregnant woman. So if the woman does not fast during these times, there is no problem. She will just be treated as an ill person. So you don't fast and you make up the days when you can. Some scholars have said that if she broke the fast for the child, not fearing for herself but fearing for the child, then she has to also pay a fidya in addition to making up the fast. But this is not a strong opinion. What is correct is that she just needs to make up for the days that she missed, and that's it. Fundamental rule number 2. These are the conditions for your fast to be sahih, to be correct. And there are 5 conditions to be met here. Number 1, al-Islam. Number 2, al-Aql. Number 3, at-Tamyiz, which is the age of distinction. Number 4, an-Niyah, intention. Number 5, that your menstruation blood and postnatal blood must be cut off or must come to an end. Okay, let's go through this. Number 1 is al-Islam, because if a kafir was to fast, it could not be accepted from him, and the evidence we have just given. Number 2 is that the person needs to be sane and not insane, because if an insane person performs an act of worship, it is not accepted, because one cannot see how he is able to perform a niyyah. Point number 3 is at-Tamyiz. This is the age at which a child can differentiate between an act of worship and any other act. We have said that this is the age of 7 years old. Point number 4 is that he needs to make his intention. In this intention, he intends to make his Siyam, first of all, the fasting, and he must also intend to gain a closeness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as is the case with all acts of worship. You must seek closeness to Allah Azza wa Jal. The hadith says, "Man lam yubayyit as-siyam qabla al-fajr fala siyama lahu." Whoever does not make his intention to fast before the fajr, then there is no fasting for him. This applies to the fard fasting, the Ramadan fasting. It does not apply to the nawafil fasting. This is due to the hadith where Rasulullah ﷺ came to the house of Aisha and he asked her, "Is there anything to eat?" And she said, "No, there isn't." So he said, فَإِنِّي إِذَنْ صَائِمٌ. So then I am fasting. So he came into the house. He was not intending to fast, but seeing as though there was no food in the house, he thought, I may as well fast then. So it becomes known that in voluntary fasting, you can make your intention at any time during the day, provided, of course, you haven't eaten from Fajr time. In Ramadan, just one intention will suffice you. So if you just make your intention once before the start of Ramadan, that you want to fast the whole of Ramadan, then this will suffice you. You don't have to keep making an intention for every day. The exception to this is if your fasting cuts off during Ramadan. So say for example in the middle of Ramadan you fall ill for 3 days. So after you recover from your illness, you will now have to make a new intention for your fasting, and you can just do this once and it will suffice you for the rest of the Ramadan. Point number 5 is that her menstruation blood and the postnatal blood must come to an end, because during these times of bleeding she is not allowed to fast. أليست إذا حاضت لم تصلي ولم تصم. Is it not that when she is menstruating that she does not fast and pray? And Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha told the woman who asked her that they were ordered to make up for the lost fasting, but they were not ordered to make up for the lost prayers. So this is an important point. During her menses she is allowed to eat and drink. However, she must do this away from the people so that they cannot see her. It is severely disliked that a Muslim woman should take tablets which prevent menstruation blood from exiting, because these tablets are extremely harmful. Let us mention an important issue at this point. If a young child reaches puberty during the daytime of Ramadan, or a madman regains his senses during the daytime of Ramadan, or a kafir becomes a Muslim during the daytime of Ramadan, all these three types of people must refrain from eating and drinking and sexual intercourse for the rest of the day up until Maghrib time. Contrast this with a menstruating woman who has her bleeding stopped during the daytime of Ramadan, so now she's become pure. The same thing with a woman in postnatal bleeding, that her bleeding stops during the daytime of Ramadan, so she becomes pure. Likewise with a traveler who returns back to his country or city during the daytime of Ramadan. We know that these three people have a permission to break their fast. But now this permission has come to an end, so they no longer have a permission to break their fast. However, these three people, because they began the day as muftir, the one who does not fast, then they can also end the day as a muftir, the one who does not fast, but they must hide themselves from the people. So why is there a difference between these two categories of people? Well, the first category of people, the obligation to fast became established. So a child reaching puberty and a madman regaining his senses and a kafir becoming Muslim, with all of these three, the obligation to fast has now become established. There is nothing holding them back. So they have to refrain during the rest of the day. As for the second category of people, they had a valid sharia rukhsa to break the fast. So if this rukhsa held true in the beginning of the day, then it also holds true at the end of the day. Fundamental point number 3, these are the sunnahs of the fasting, and there are 6 of them. So making a note, number 1, to break your fast as early as possible. Number 2, to eat the suhoor as late as possible. Number 3, to increase in your acts of goodness. Number 4, if you are insulted, not to retaliate, but rather to say, I am fasting. Number 5, to make dua at the time of iftar. And number 6 is to make your iftar with succulent dates, if not then dried dates, and if not then water. Okay, let's go through these points. Point number 1 is to hurry up in your iftar. Now, whenever it becomes known that the sun has set, or you think it is most likely that the sun has set, then make your iftar. Do not delay. Rasulullah alayhi salatu wasalam said, لا تزال أمتي على خير ما عجلوا الفطر, that my ummah will continue to be upon goodness as long as they hurry up with their iftar. Point number 2 is to eat your suhoor as late as possible. Really, this should be done a little before the Salat al-Fajr. Rasulullah alayhi salatu wasalam said, تسحروا فإن في السحور بركة, to eat your suhoor, because in the suhoor there is barakah. The suhoor should be a short meal. The length of time it took Rasulullah ﷺ to eat the suhoor was the length of time it takes to recite 50 ayat of the Quran. There is a hadith that also says, فَصْلُ مَا بَيْنَ صِيَامِنَا وَصِيَامِ أَهْلِ الْكِتَابِ أَكْلَةُ السُّحُورِ, that the difference between our fasting and the fasting of the people of the book is the eating of the suhoor. In many of these timetables there is a bid'ah that you see, which is, it says that you stop eating your suhoor about 10 minutes before Fajr, and this is clearly in defiance of the Quran, which says, وَكُلُوا وَاشْرَبُوا حَتَّى يَتَبَيَّنَ لَكُمُ الْخَيْطُ الْأَبْيَضُ مِنَ الْخَيْطِ الْأَسْوَدِ مِنَ الْفَجْرِ ثُمَّ أَتِمُّوا الصِّيَامَ إِلَى اللَّيْلِ. Then eat or drink until you can differentiate between the white thread and the black thread of the night, meaning until the dawn breaks through, the white thread of the dawn, and then complete your fasting up until the night, meaning the Maghrib. So here the Quranic ayah tells us that we eat and drink up until the break of dawn, the white thread of dawn. It does not tell us to eat or drink up until 10 minutes before the Fajr. Point number 3 is to increase in your good deeds. This is because Rasulullah ﷺ was normally the most generous of all men. However, in Ramadan he was even more generous. As Ibn Abbas said, he was more generous than the blowing wind, meaning he was faster and quicker and swifter in doing more good deeds and being more generous in charity than the wind that blows. So whether this be extra reciting the Quran, extra dhikr, extra dua, extra prayer, extra charity, any act of worship that you can think of, just notch up a gear, increase in this. Point number 4 is that if somebody insults you or tries to fight you, then you do not retaliate, but you say that I am fasting. This is due to the hadith, إِذَا كَانَ يَوْمُ صَوْمِ أَحَدِكُمْ وَشَاتَمَهُ أَحَدٌ أو قاتله فليقل إني صائم إني صائم. When one of you is fasting and somebody insults him or tries to fight him, then let him say, I am fasting. This can be said aloud, and there's no problem in that, because al-qawl, which is statement, can only be a qawl if it is said out aloud. Otherwise it cannot be a qawl, a statement. Rather it is just a thought. In normal circumstances, if you were to be insulted or somebody fought you, then you would be allowed to retaliate or insult them back. وَجَزَاءُ سَيِّئَةٍ سَيِّئَةٌ مِثْلُهَا, and the reward of evil is an evil like unto it. However, during the fasting this does not apply because of the hadith that we have just mentioned. A fasting person needs to be careful what he says and does. Rasulullah ﷺ said, من لم يدع قول الزور والعمل به والجهل فليس لله حاجة في أن يدع طعامه وشرابه. Whoever does not give up false and lying and evil speech and acting on it, and also doing ignorant things, which here means to sin, then Allah does not have any need that he should give up his food and drink. So do make sure that you watch your tongue, cut out on all the chit-chat, gossip, worldly talk and useless talk. The scholars also have a little proverb, Man kathura kalamuhu kathura khata'uh. The more one speaks, the more one falls into error. Point number 5, really the fasting person should be making dua all throughout his fast, because it is more likely that it will be accepted. There is a dua which is mentioned at the time of the iftar, which is ذهب الظمأ وابتلت العروق وثبت الأجر إن شاء الله, that the thirst has gone and the veins have become moist and the reward has become established inshaAllah. Suffice to say that a fasting person should be making dua all throughout his fast, because it is more likely to be accepted. Point number 6 is, as the hadith says, that Rasulullah ﷺ used to break his fast with succulent or juicy dates, if not then dried dates, If not, then water. This is recommended, otherwise you could break your fast with anything. Let us take a few questions at this stage. Question number 1. What is the evidence from the hadith that a breastfeeding woman or a pregnant woman does not have to fast? Question number 2. If a person is enduring an illness in which there's no hope of recovery, then what is it upon him to do when it comes to the Ramadan fasting? Question number 3. When traveling, is it better to fast or break your fast? Explain your answer. Question number 4. If a menstruating woman stops menstruating during the daytime of Ramadan, is it obligatory upon her to refrain from eating and drinking for the rest of the day or not? Question number 5. Mention the 6 sunan elements of the fasting.